Intelligence at NG Aspects joins us. Amrita, thank you so much for weighing in this morning and having your expertise on board for what is now crucial for markets watching the Strait of Hormuz. We've already seen repricing in the oil market in recent weeks around the conflict. What do you make of where we stand?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look, I've kind of been saying this, and our view remains that we actually don't think the straits actually get shut. Yes, we've seen the headlines yesterday, but the parliamentary body is actually not the decision maker, as you guys have rightly pointed out. If you think about it, look, if Iran were to close the straits, it is probably going to draw the US back in at a time when Iran is probably, or the leadership is at its weakest in 40 years. It'll probably even turn neutral neighbors like Qatar against it. So it is obviously calculating how it responds. We think a symbolic response against, certain US bases like they've done previously, potentially in Iraq, could be something they go after. But this is not what they're focusing on right now. I think it is about protecting the regime and then, very likely hunkering down, not really negotiating. I think they've kind of been very clear that negotiations off the table for now. I think that's going to be how Iran plays this, rather than necessarily drawing the ire of the Straits.
Amrita, let's just get to that point around what we could see on the Strait of Hormuz, because it feels as though the Americans think that Iran will not go for this option, that it'll be a bargaining chip potentially. But if we see the regime pushed and there is a hint around some sort of regime change, if this is something that is the Americans or the Israelis, those actors so far driving for, could that tilt the balance between whether we see the Strait of Hormuz shut or remain open?
Again, it'll very much be the last resort for them, because if they know that if they were to do that, it would really turn even any country that was neutral for Iran against them, right? And it would really draw the US back in a much, much bigger scale, which we're not convinced the Iranians want to go for. Now, that's not to say that, there isn't a miscalculus at some point and they do that. But if that's the case, then, also the closure is not going to last for very long, given the US is going to do absolutely everything afterwards to keep it open. You're going to get a spike in oil prices for maybe a couple of hours, maybe a day, and then basically you will have regime change, and then Iran has to kind of bear the repercussions of that.
Amrita, good morning. One of the other big questions that we're asking this morning is where the enriched uranium stockpile is. It's unaccounted for at this point, which leaves open the big question, how quickly could Iran look to reaccelerate its nuclear program, and could the events of the last 24 hours lead them to more swiftly moving into a nuclear weapons program? What is your take there, the sort of chances of that happening?
And I think that's exactly where Iran is going to focus on, rather than the straits, right? Like, we've kind of noted this as well. There's a fair amount of this enriched material that is unaccounted for. It does mean that Iran is probably capable of potentially still kind of, coming up with a nuclear bomb. But obviously, the strikes have set them back several years. This is precisely why Israel isn't done yet. And I think it's been very clear that those strikes will continue on both sides, really, Iran and Israel. And I think that is going to mean that I've seen the kind of reaction in the market today that we gapped higher, but we've sold off since, because again, the market's pretty sanguine that oil supplies are not going to be hurt. But I would also say that this is precisely why the issue around the enrichment, the fact that Israel is aware of that, and means that for them, this is not a job fully done. This conflict isn't over, and it is going to continue for some time. And the longer it goes on, by the way, it is more bearish for that medium-term oil production in the region. And I don't think the market's kind of focusing on that, but I do think this is a more critical issue right now.